welcome to this tutorial on coding. My name is Joshua, and today I will be going through and teaching you programming from ground zero. This requires no previous experience with programming, no prior knowledge. I'm going to assume that you are an infant with absolutely no knowledge of programming. The second point I would just like to say before starting this is we will be focusing on Python as our programming language. So I will be focusing my examples on Python, as you'll see in a moment. But the knowledge you get from this are good for any programming language. They will work relatively similarly. If you don't know what I mean by programming languages and Python and whatever, don't worry. Again, I'm assuming zero knowledge. We will get into that later. That's more just for people who kind of know what's going on. Okay, so let's begin. The first thing I will say actually is, of course, this is going to be looking at the absolute fundamentals. We're not going to be doing anything super complicated today. We're not going to be hacking and creating the matrix or anything like that. We are going to be looking at the basics. Now, that starts with data types. During your programming career, you will be making all sorts of wonderful programs. You might be making games or databases, whatever, but fundamentally it all boils down to moving data around, processing data, changing data, manipulating it, whatever, to make things happen. So there are some specific data types that you need to know of in order to do that. Our first one that we're going to look at is a character. Now, I will apologize because my pen is a little bit funny whilst I'm recording, but hopefully we can write stuff down. It should be okay. So I'm going to abbreviate that to char or char, however you want to say it, because that's normally what it's written as in a programming language. So a character is simply a symbol, so maybe a dollar sign like that, or maybe it's going to be a number like that was meant to be the number 6. Let's go with an easier number to draw, like the number 1. Or it might be a letter, or some other character, maybe even an emoji. Okay, and then we have a string as our next data type. String, come on, we can do this. String. Now, a string, the way I explain this is think of primary school, where you had to make those spaghetti necklaces, where you take a bit of string and you'd slide on the pasta shells, not shells, pasta tubes onto the string, and you'd have one necklace. That is what a string is in programming. You're taking characters, which are your pasta, and you're sliding it onto your string. A string is a collection of characters. In other words, without using the silly analogy, it is text. It is a sentence or a paragraph, it might be a word, whatever. An example being something like hello. Hello. Notice that characters have single quotation marks around them. That notifies the computer, wait, you're looking at text. And with strings, it has the double quotation marks, again going computer, this is text, please process it as text. I'm pretty sure you can use quotation marks or single quotation marks for either or, it doesn't matter. It's just etiquette that we use single ones around quotation because it's a single character, and double around a string because it's multiple. Now, the other type of data to note is numbers, and computers understand numbers in two ways. We have integers, which you should know from maths is a whole number. That might be something like 6, or it could be a million. And then we also have what are called real numbers, also known as floats. You may see that term flown around. And that is just a number with a decimal point. That is meant to be 6.0. It could also be 1.5, whatever. And that doesn't have to be one number after the decimal. It might be a really long decimal. Normally there's a limit on a computer because you can only store so much information. But for now, all you need to know is that is a decimal point number. And then the final data type that you have to know about, which is very important in computer science, is a Boolean or a bool, which is simply a true, which I'm going to put a T, or a false, an F. True or false, 0 or 1, yes or no. Very useful for, well, all sorts of things in programming you will come across, I am sure. Computers love using zeros and ones, binary logic, very useful. So constructs then, let's move on. So a construct it's effectively the process that is happening in your program, let's say. And there are three that you want to know about, and they should make kind of logical sense. That's not an integral sign, that is an S. Sequence, that is a really, I do not know what's going on with the pen there. Anyway, that's a sequence, I promise. Now, sequence is simply the order in which your code is run. I'm sure you've probably seen code before. It doesn't normally look like this horrible example here. It's normally line by line. It looks, kind of logically formatted, and it will often enough run line by line from top to bottom until it's all run. That is the usual sequence. Sometimes that sequence can change according to what is called selection. Selection. Now, selection is, well, you could probably guess, it's deciding which bit of code is going to run next. We use if statements to decide this, among other things. So, for example, I might say, if one number is bigger than another number, I want to do something. Else, I want to do something else. And from there, you can see it's going to run one bit of code or a different bit of code, changing that sequence. And then the final construct I want to introduce you to is known as iteration. Iteration. Iteration means repetition. It's a little joke. So iteration, we have what are called loops in programming. Now, you might have a block of code that you want to run multiple times. And so we use loops and things like that to run that code over and over, so we don't have to write it out multiple times, which would be very inefficient. Okay, right, that is everything on this slide. So let's have a look at an example of these constructs and data types in action. So I have got an example Python program that I wrote earlier. I'm just going to quickly point out this hashtag. This hashtag is what is known as a comment. Anything after that hashtag on this line, the computer is going to completely ignore. It does not care about it. You could write a horrible, nasty thing about the computer and it just will completely ignore you. A comment is purely so that you can read it. It's normally so you can annotate what the code is doing. You put a little note to yourself that you need to get groceries later, whatever. I've obviously put it here to title the program so I know what it's doing if I ever find this on my computer a few years down the line, so I remember what it was. And then the other thing to note is you'll see different colors appearing. Python is doing that for us to tell us what it is doing in the program. I will get into that a little bit later on, but that is automatic and it's very, very useful. Okay, right, so let's have a look at what this program's actually doing then. The first line then is going to be x equals 0. Now, this is called variable assignment. Now, I am creating a variable x, which I want you to picture as a box with a label x that's drawn a little bit neater than the one I've done there. Now, you can think of this box as storing one of the data types we looked at earlier. In this instance, we're going to be storing an integer. Perfect, well done. The integer being 0. But it could be any data type. It could be a Boolean, where it's just going to have the value true or the value false. It could be a string saying hello world or whatever. And we're going to store it inside that box. We might have loads and loads of different boxes that we're keeping track of with lots of different values in. And let's say we need to access one of the values because maybe the user's inputted something into that box for us. We can just open that box up, have a look inside and go, oh yeah, that's the number 0. So if we have a look at this program then, we next have the, on line 5, we have the while statement. Now this is a type of loop. And what I'm saying to the program is, while x is less than 10, run this code. So everything that's been shifted over. That's called an indent. So if we read that then, using this idea of a box, what I'm saying is, while the value in that box is less than 10, we look in that box, it's currently 0, so it is. We're going to print x. Now, this is just a built-in function, so you don't need to worry about how it works. But what it does is it just outputs whatever is in this bracket to the console, which is going to be over here for demonstration purposes. And then we have x equals x plus 1. Now, you could probably guess what this means. It just means to increment the value of x by 1. You can see this is kind of similar to maths, but it's not the same thing as maths, because this would be impossible in your mathematics, because x equals x plus 1. There is no number that satisfies that equation. It's not the same thing. Do not get confused. What is the same is this thing here, less than. I shouldn't say thing, I should say operator. We are checking x is less than 10, but you can also do less than or equal to, or you could do greater than. That is not a greater than symbol. Greater than or equal to, just that equal sign afterwards. You could do directly equal to. Notice it's a double equal, so we don't get confused with our assignment to a variable. And there's also not equal to as well, which is just this exclamation mark, like, it's not that. That's how I remember it. It's a silly way to remember it, but it works. Okay, so looking at this code, could you guess what it's going to do? Probably, hopefully. It's relatively simple, but obviously don't worry if you're not sure. Let's have a look. Ta-da. It is going to print the numbers from 0 to 9. Notice it's not going to 10 because it is less than 10, not less than or equal to 10. So as soon as it hits 10, it is no longer less than 10, so it breaks out of the loop. That's why it only counts to 9. So this is a very simple example of showing a program. And if we just have a look quickly for our constructs, there is an example of sequence throughout the code. We run line 3, then we run line 5, then we run 6 and 7, and then we have our example of iteration, where we go back up to line 6, or technically line 5, to have a look at that comparison again, to see, is x still less than 10? Yes, it is. So we run it again. So we do 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7. That's, again, our sequence within our iteration. And then our selection statement is obviously this comparison here, x less than 10. So that is just a demo program introducing you to the kind of just general gist of how you might run a program, some of the kind of basic ideas. From here, we might have a look at some more syntax using things like if statements to branch to new lines of code, and looking at different types of loop as well, and maybe more complicated loops. But I would say for now, that will probably do. That is the absolute basics. Hopefully that all makes sense. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that it was informative.